Welcome in to KSO Postgame Live. Mason Voth, KSU fan, Drew Galloway. It's like a whole new season just started. It's the Matt Driscoll era. New coach, new team, new season, new cats. K-State 1-0 under the direction of Matthew Driscoll. A blowout win over Baylor tonight, 90-74, the final score. Obviously, the biggest win in Big 12 play. It's only their second, and the earlier victory came against Utah by 3 points at home, and it was a massive nail biter. If you are going to try to reference anything that involves winning, this is actually K-State's biggest win since, let's see, what day was that against South Dakota? December 20th. So almost 2 full months ago, because their last non-con game, maybe some signs, they only beat UL Monroe by 9 points. So it has been almost 2 months since they beat a team to this level, but they dominated Baylor tonight pretty much from the jump. And obviously, it helps when you shoot the ball well. But I think there are probably some reasons why this team shot the ball well. And while the turnover numbers were up, okay, they had a few more possessions in the game. We will talk about that. And they played really good basketball tonight, at least in the sense of everything felt mostly congruent with the players on the floor and the coaching. We saw Matthew Driscoll use a timeout early in the game when it felt like a lead was shrinking rather quickly. He stopped the bleeding immediately, and it was a big deal. I do want to point to first. So, by the way, Mason, both KSU fan Drew Galloway here for KSO Postgame Live after the 90-74 win. 77 possessions tonight for K-State against Baylor. I put up on the screen the last 3 games and what that number was: 71, 68, 69. Now, you may say 71-77, what's the big deal? Fan, I ask you, what is the big deal? And is that a number to take away, or is that just an interesting thing, maybe an outlier, going to need some more data like against Texas Tech this weekend?
The pace was definitely pushed, and that's the stat tracker stats, which is often off a little bit from the formula stats KenPom uses. KenPom's stats would have it at 81 possessions, which is the second fastest in Big 12 play. Only Arizona was faster, and I think we saw the ball move. K-State scored 24 fast break points, something they haven't done in Big 12 play, I don't believe, all year, to get over 20 fast break points. That was kind of the MO early when we were playing well. I do think it was by design. I think because the other thing is Baylor tends to play slow. Baylor is one of the slower teams in the league, so K-State dictated the pace and controlled the pace and played the pace they wanted to, mainly led by Nate Johnson kind of taking the lead guard spot most of this game and having his best game as a cat. So I think that's a big part of it. And we saw the backcourt duo I think we thought we would see more often this year. You just get 30 points each from Johnson and Haggerty, the first double 30-baller since Beasley and Walker. So a lot of good things with the offense. And we will see if the pace continues, but they definitely tried to play faster. And I think that is part of Driscoll running things and not Tang wanting to be more defensive when it really didn't work because the defense wasn't any good anyway.
Drew, what did you make of what you saw tonight from K-State and how it operated?
I posted it in our instant takeaways from the game. I don't think that playing fast and also having the most efficient offense in Big 12 play, I don't think that is a coincidence that the pace was back and the efficiency was back. It really just was a microcosm of this season could have been a lot of fun if K-State stuck with what they did in November and didn't try to revert back in December after losing to Nebraska and then losing to Indiana, and trying to shove a square into a circle. It was just it was very clear that this wasn't going to be a team that could win by playing defense and win by doing the little things right. It was going to be, hey, we're going to get out, we're just going to run you to death, and we're going to outscore you. And to lean into it in tonight's game was fun and took me back to the early parts of the season, like the Cal game, the Tulsa game, where like we sat here and we're like, hey, this is a lot of fun. They're scoring a lot of points. The defense, it doesn't necessarily matter when you can put up 90 without really feeling like you're shooting the ball like ungodly. So it was a lot of fun. Good to be back in the win column. Frustrating also because, like I said, it just feels like this is the way that they should have been playing the entire time and just leaning into it. And I think that you saw what Jerome Tang had control of, and now when you go and you immediately revert back to what you did in November. Remember, Matthew Driscoll was very involved on the sidelines in November, was less involved in December, January, and up until today. So it does make you wonder a bit.
Yeah, well, and somebody I know at least one pointed it out on the board. I had noticed it at different times where it just felt like maybe things weren't necessarily jiving between Tang and Driscoll in moments, and like that's to be expected somewhat for a guy that just spent the last 16 seasons running his own team. So he's gone the better part of a decade and a half of knowing, hey, this is what I would do in this situation, how I would handle this. And so he gets a little bit sidetracked with how everything goes on. I could understand how that would happen, but it just seemed like it was maybe a little much. And we also know how big of a deal things were made in the offseason about he's coming in to fix this offense. And it felt like it at first. But then after that Nebraska game, it did feel like it went away for the most part. Now, they still had some games where they put up a decent amount of points, but things did feel differently from that point forward. And then obviously they weren't able to recapture much of the magic once Big 12 play started.
And a lot of the games that post Nebraska that they actually played pretty well on offense were against like the truly terrible teams of college basketball.
Yeah, exactly. They when they finally figured it out, they got to play teams that are atrocious outside of Creighton, who, they beat 83-76, which isn't anything out of the realm of, possibility for anybody right now. Creighton's not having a great season, but I think this is what you could have expected tonight. I don't know that a win necessarily made sense, but they certainly I expected them to be in this game. I picked them to win before the game. I thought that they would get it done tonight just because it made too much sense for this to go down. And I think that's just how distracted Jerome Tang had become at the end. I'm not going to say that, it's because he can't coach at all. I'm not going to go that far, but I will say that over the last couple of seasons, I just think that the distractions had gotten to him and he was so scatterbrained and there was no clear approach that you had somebody come in like Matthew Driscoll. And we talked about this in the offseason when they hired Driscoll and Bill Peterson. They're finally bringing some adults into the room. They're bringing some guys in that are going to be able to step up and say, hey, no, that's not how we should do this. Unfortunately, it would seem that maybe at different points they shied away from leaning on that experience and knowledge.
Yeah, I think, and the key difference I saw was the freedom and the confidence and the energy Nate Johnson played with, especially on the offensive end.
You could tell from the first possession, the shot he took to start the game, it's like that's a totally different dude.
Yeah, we hadn't seen him back down and shoot some of those 2-point shots. He was good from three. But when you score, what did he have, 33 points on 16 shots, that's about as efficient as you can get. That's incredible. Plus, he did the other things. He had 9 assists. He had 6 steals. He had 5 rebounds. So we saw those things that Nate has really done all year. Like, those things have not dropped off. But the aggressive scoring and the shooting is what we haven't seen for a long time. So it's really impressive what we saw from him. And then I think that opened up the court for P.J. Haggerty. And those two just played off each other. They shared the ball with each other. They distributed with each other. And that's the duo we thought we would have. I thought that's what I envisioned when we brought those two in, that we would play. And that's not to say they were going to score 30 apiece every game, but that kind of playing off each other and really being the two lead guards and dogs we thought they could be was what we saw tonight. We haven't seen it very often this season.
Yeah, it really does show, I think, that Nate Johnson is better suited for an offense that is free flowing, at least when he can score, because he's a really good passer. And I think that he was again kind of forced into doing something that he wasn't necessarily accustomed to do, and to be the lead guard and be this distributor. But when you had him do that, he kind of went away from looking for his own shots and looking for his own game. So we're seeing more and more of him doing the little things and doing everything that we expected to, because this is kind of the culmination. Like, K-State hasn't had a player go 4 games and have a double-double with points and rebounds and points and assists in quite a long time. Like, he is kind of on a roll here, but this is probably the best game that he's played at K-State, and makes it really sad that it's kind of happening in a season that is kind of a waste at this point, but he's really turning it around, and I'm really excited about where the rest of the season can go, because we never know. I mean, just because they won tonight by 16, and the game never really was that close, even. So to see that, like, it's not to say that Saturday they'll go to Lubbock and win, but it feels like everything is a little bit more palatable now.
Yeah.
So we can move on, and everybody can kind of celebrate this, because it feels good to be sitting here and talking about a win and not like a close win over Utah, who is terrible.
Yeah, I think you look at what just took place, like the way I feel about this game, it was a very clean going into it. Like the only thing that you want to come out of this is K-State to win the game. There were no mixed emotions or feelings about it. And now moving forward, like, yeah, the season's lost. It's not going to go the way that it should have, and it's not going to be a happy outcome at the end. But I'm excited to sit down and watch as many K-State basketball games as are remaining. Maybe it's because they won by 16 tonight against a Baylor team that is not good. Like Baylor is not good, but guess what? Baylor was still miles ahead of where this K-State team had been until today. And so I think it's going to be interesting and at least fun to watch them. And because the schedule's kind of fascinating finishing out, you're going to play 2 games on the road at really, really good teams. So I mean, that's more than a measuring stick. That's something in a whole different ballpark. It's going to bookend the next 5 games to close out the regular season. At Tech this weekend, and then at KU to close out the regular season. But between that, at Colorado, TCU at home, West Virginia at home, all 3 teams that K-State could easily beat and compete with. So I'll get to the first question from the chat tonight. Dan Boy asks, over under 3 wins for Driscoll as interim head coach this season. Now he already has 1, so we'll make that number. We'll make that number. Do you want me to do 2.5 or 3.5? Does 2.5 make it too easy for you?
2.5 is too easy. I'd go
Okay.
3.5.
All right, 3.5. Does K-State win 3 of their last 5 regular? Well, and you get the Big 12 tournament, which could turn into nearly an infinite amount of games if infinity in your mind is 5.
I think I'm still going under at 3.5, because 3 I think is too easy, because I think 3 is probably the correct answer. Like, I think it's a push at 3.
I would take the over of 3.5. I think they win at least 2 in the regular season, and they beat whoever they play night 1 in Kansas City. And that's going to be the underrated part of this, is that I think this makes the first game in Kansas City, you're going to maybe have a better crowd than you would have, and people will be maybe a little bit more energized to show up, so you could have at least a fun, winnable game there. So I will take the over there. I say that K-State wins at least 4 closing out the season.
Yeah, I would not be surprised by that. A chance to surpass Jimmy Elgis in the interim head coaching legendary status, and maybe meet Darrell Winston with his 5 interim coaching wins in 1985.
Does Driscoll coach the Crown?
He could. If we go to the Crown, he could whip Darrell Winston, and we know what the Crown teams have done this year.
True.
So,
it's a springboard. Yeah, no, it's a great question by Dan to throw that out there, because it felt different tonight. It looked different. It was fun. So it's a good hypothetical to kind of talk about. Let's get into the game itself. It's been a while since it feels like the game that played out in front of us, that's what's actually worth talking about. But because it was so different, and because it's setting the stage for whatever is about to come, one of the first notes that I took out of the chat was G. Brew saying Driscoll knows how to manage game flow substitutions. That was clearer tonight. We talked about the timeout that he used to kind of stop the bleeding early in the first half. It was a timeout that many times we saw Jerome Tang not use. The other thing that sticks out kind of like a sore thumb in all of this, that makes things different, is that the rotation was shrunk down in a really big way tonight for K-State. There were some guys that you notably didn't see. Unfortunately, one of them was my boy, Marcus Johnson, RIP. Not dead, but might as well be, since they didn't want to play him tonight. CJ Jones only logged 10 minutes. And again, this all comes with Andre Kostic getting back into the rotation, but even he only played 11. Now, it will be fascinating, since he's coming off of the rolled ankle. Like, it was that something where, hey, this is just about keeping him a little fresher. Maybe he can't give us as many. Will we see more moving forward? But I do think it's clear that, based off of how the in-game situation was called and how Driscoll rotated players, that he definitely viewed some things with this team drastically differently than Jerome Tang.
Yeah, and I think the other aspect is, as you mentioned, Kostic being back. Even though he didn't play tonight, Bashir was on the questionable list yesterday. So you get those two back, and that opens up your offense. You got good effort and energy from the guys, and I would think you're going to continue to see that as guys want to finish out their careers well, and then the rest. And again, there's some questions in the chat about who might be back. Regardless, they're going to want to play for whoever's next, whether they want to stay here or whether they want to go somewhere else. These guys aren't dumb. And that's, to me, what I saw. I think we also saw, you talked about kind of the pressure on Tang as the losing continued. I think we saw some of the pressure on the players. And I think with what happened this weekend, some of that pressure came off those players. And I think most notably Nate Johnson. We saw some other guys struggle, David Castillo especially. But when that pressure comes off, if they're going to play with energy and heart, they can beat several of these teams left in the schedule, especially with some of the home games left. So we'll see what happens with that. But I do think where they go from here and how these players play the rest of the way, and who comes back off injury will be a big factor if they win some games.
Hey, Fan, is this a second segment on radio with the coach?
Jesus Christ. Yes. He's down there. He's still going.
It's been a while. It's been a while since they got to that second segment.
For 2 segments. Yes. It's been a long while.
Let me get a couple of questions out of the way and address a few people have brought it up because the ESPN announcers, I think, misspoke, or they know something that literally nobody else knows, apparently even the players. They made reference to all the players being in the portal. So you all deserve clarity. No, none of these guys are in the portal right now. In fact, they can't be because, number one, there is like a waiting period, even with the rule of, hey, a coach gets fired, you can enter. And then on top of that, I'm pretty sure that they've actually done away with that aspect of it now with how the transfer stuff has been kind of reconfigured. So no, none of these players are in the portal yet. Now, their previous head coach did throw them in the portal less than a week ago. So that may have been what they were referencing, is that none of these guys are going to be able to come back. But yes, none of them are in the portal right now. So don't worry about that. They're going to have just as good of a chance to retain whoever you want, whether they were in it or not. But yeah, they're not officially in. So we'll see how that ends up playing out. And we'll talk about that at some point tonight. The chances of guys coming back.
The ruling that passed, literally last month, says that when a coaching change occurs in basketball, a 15-day period opens 5 days after the new coach is hired or publicly announced. if a new coach is not announced within 30 days of the previous coach's departure, in the 31st day after the head coach's departure, is after the championship game, a 15-day window will open. So it's not open right now. It won't open until either after the championship game or if K-State hires a new coach before the championship game, which is probably going to be the case.
Yeah. Another question to throw out for you guys. A-Palms asks, how much of this game was coaching versus the players showing up? Now, I would say from my perspective, there's a chance that all kind of ties together in some ways where the players show up. And my wife asked me before the game, she was like, well, how will they even like play tonight? Or what are they going to do? And I said, well, you can kind of look at it in a couple of different ways, is that the team had probably checked out on Tang some, and like clearly Tang had checked out on the team. So either nothing's going to change and you're just going to kind of get the same thing, or it's going to improve. I didn't think there was a way that things could get worse for them. Now, look, they had been playing pretty poorly. They played a little bit better against Houston for like 15 minutes to make Houston uncomfortable in the first half. And then it really didn't matter from that point. But from your guys' view, was this a coaching change thing or the players showing up and that maybe they were holding that out from Jerome Tang?
I mean, I think that you hit it on the head. I think that they go hand in hand. Like it's both. Like if you can't get them to play hard, why should they or why would they? And if you don't have a good game plan, like it's kind of your fault. Like it helps a little bit of both. So I think that it's pretty clearly both. And like I had no idea what to expect, but I mean, that went a lot better than I expected it to go, and I think it's because Matthew Driscoll leaned into how they probably should have been playing all year.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think it goes back, I think I said it at the Utah game because we had several guys out. When adversity hits, and usually you think of guys made out of injuries, especially key guys. Teams either usually come together really tightly and play really well for a game or two until people figure them out where they splinter. And I think with the coaching change in season, it can be even more magnified. The team can really come together. Obviously we saw this team come together. We talked about the offense, but the funny thing was this was K-State's best defensive game in Big 12 play, their third best defensive game of the year, and they held Baylor to their second worst defense or offensive efficiency of the season. So K-State played some pretty good defense. Now, Baylor did choose the three well, so that's K-State's defense. K-State has their best aspect on defense has been 3-point defense percentage, which to me is a fluky stat, but it's been something K-State has done well. Year. And they also forced turnovers tonight, which was, I think, the biggest advantage K-State had coming in the game is forcing turnovers. They did a good job of that. They scored points off those turnovers, which is something that this defense hasn't done a lot this year. That was a key to having a great defense.
So we can discuss it right now, the prospects of guys coming back, because I think that there are people that are really interested in that, and it seems timely given where we're at and talking about how tonight played out. And certainly you got a strong performance from PJ Haggerty, who does have a year of eligibility left. It'll be interesting if he decides that his best value comes with returning to college. I would suggest that it does. Like, nothing that he does gives off that he is going to be able to play in the NBA. Or at least in a way that's meaningful, so he could get the most money in college next year. And while it's not an apples to apples situation with Doug McDaniel last year, because there were some other reasons why you wouldn't want to keep Doug McDaniel, this would just purely be a what can you do on the basketball court thing with Haggerty. I don't know that it's going to make a ton of sense for a guy like that to stick around. And honestly, like, this may sound crazy to some. I know others will align with me on it. Like, I don't know that you want to commit to PJ Haggerty being your best guy on a new team with a new coach, because Even though he played well tonight and it worked out, and maybe we're going to see it look differently because Driscoll's instructing the team and the offense is going to be a little bit more modified. I just haven't seen enough to feel like what he does is actually impacting the game as much as the box score would say with his scoring at times. It doesn't feel like a traditional number one that can kind of carry you. Like this is not Marquise Noel and PJ Haggerty, even though PJ Haggerty's scoring more in a game than Marquise Noel. You can go down the list of any of the good K-State teams and maybe even some of the bad ones. Like I would rather have, Dean Wade as my number one or Barry Brown as my number one than PJ Haggerty. And you can keep going through it. So I don't think that makes sense. Really, to me, the only guys that stand out as legitimate possibilities that they stick around, Taj Manning, we would have to start there. He's already been here 4 years. He seems like a guy that's willing to accept his role. And at this stage of his career, I think the only move that Taj Manning would make is saying he wants to go and be the guy on a team at a low major school or like a struggling mid-major. And is that worth it to him after 4 years at the Power 5 level? Probably not. And then on top of that, I would say David Castillo, the chance would be there because like he's going to feel like one of the guys that's ingrained in all of this. So maybe he buys in to that. And it certainly doesn't hurt that Clint Stewart, his high school basketball coach, played at K-State for 4 years under 3 different head coaches. And he got the benefit of playing for a coach that got fired. He stuck around, played for Bob Huggins, did things that had not been done for K-State, and then stuck around for Frank Martin and got to play in the NCAA tournament. So I think that that's going to be on the side there, but like I wouldn't fault David Castillo for leaving. And we'll talk about him because he had an interesting night for K-State. But those are really the only guys that I could say, like, could even paint the picture right now that there's any thought to me that they could stick around. Everybody else, it probably makes sense if they have eligibility, they are probably moving on just because unless the coach that comes in really wants them and re-recruits them, those are the only two that stick out in my mind as possible guys that on their own say, hey, no matter what happens, I'm staying here, similar to what Marquise Noel and Ish Massoud did when Jerome Tang took over.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Like those two make the most sense. I don't think that it's a coincidence that the two guys that make the most sense are the guys that have actually been at K-State for multiple years. Like those are the only two guys that have been there for multiple years outside of CJ Jones, who is out of eligibility. Darn. So like it's going to be those two probably, and then kind of wait and see. I think some of this, like I said, on Sunday or Monday or whatever day it was that this is now kind of like an audition period, and if you want to maybe stick around, this is your time to show it. And we'll see after like a more of a sample size of like who is really acting like they want to stick around.
Yeah, I would agree with everything you guys both said. I mean, the only one that I might squint at and see coming back is Abdi Bashir, just because he's kind of sort of local. He's from Omaha.
Yeah, and I would take him back. You know me.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, if the new coach values 3-point shooting, which most smart basketball coaches in college basketball do now, I think he proved that he's a high-level shooter. You have to obviously work on the defense, but I think he's a guy that is a good kid that I don't think there's any issues with him off the floor or attitude-wise. I think he's a pretty coachable kid, and I think he can play at this level as a kind of sniper, especially with the size, and he gets a shot off quick. I mean, we saw it. Like, he's legit as a shooter. So that would be the only one besides Castillo and Manning that I could see coming back.
Well, and I always pointed out too is you can have a guy that's a little bit more of a defensive liability if you have the right guys around him. So, you can, if he's going to do something at an elite level, like shoot it, which he has this year when he's been on the floor, you can sustain that. The only 4 guys on the roster that cannot come back next season, Kamari McGriff, Marcus Johnson, Nate Johnson, and CJ Jones. So everybody else that is here, the ability to come back and play another college basketball season is there. It's just maybe not likely that they do it at K-State. And I would say the max that you could see staying is 3. The most likely scenario, though, is probably that it's 0 or 1 that sticks around. And that's not a bad thing for K-State, where some of these guys would be nice dudes to start over with and have, but the role's going to change, and you're just going to be, when a team's bad, you don't want to keep everybody. And it's not the worst thing if you lose everybody. We kind of went through that with K-State football this past year. It's like, well, how many of these guys do you actually want to keep? Because the team was 6-6. So maybe you want to change something up, but we'll have to see how this ends up working around. I'll get to a couple of the other comments and get us going on through this. And one of the things that's been brought up in the chat is where it would get to for Matthew Driscoll to become the choice at head coach moving forward for K-State. Ron said, if we miss on Utah State, St. Louis, or New Mexico coach to hire, would Driscoll be an option for 1 year? I don't think it'd be for 1 year. I don't think K-State would get into the business of going interim long-term, but I will say it's a lot easier to do something like that and would be outside the box in this era of college basketball, where it's not like the roster stayed the same year to year under Jerome Tang any of the 4 seasons. So basketball is a little different to football, where high school recruiting is still very important to football. But I don't think that would happen. I think the conversation would become, how far down the list of guys would you have to get to whiff if you're Gene Taylor, where with a strong finish from K-State this year, would you start to get the crazy idea that maybe we try this with Matthew Driscoll? It would be a very inexpensive option, especially if you are paying money to Jerome Tang or lawyers or whatever it ends up being in that situation. So again, purely hypothetical. I really doubt that it gets to that point, but because people are curious, Drew, how far down the list do you think K-State would get for that to become an option? And again, in this scenario, they have actually won 4 or 5 games to close out the season.
I think you probably got to get down to like the 10th or to like 10 to 15 no's. And that's like not a knock to Matthew Driscoll. I think that's just, he has not really had a lot of success as a head coach at North Florida. North Florida's not like a great job to begin with. But in the last like 5 years, I think it was, he wasn't even above 500 at North Florida. Like, I think that you would have to be really hurting financially. And I don't even think it's like K-State would have to win 4 or 5 games. Like, I think K-State would have to win probably, they would have to beat probably Texas Tech, Colorado, TCU, and West Virginia, and win 2 or 3 in Kansas City for me to really even consider that being an option.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be borderline Steve Fisher. Like, let's be real here. Like, yeah. I mean, not win the national title necessarily, but come on. Like,
also, by the way, like you don't want to do that. You don't want to hire a guy just because he won a bunch of games as an interim coach. It's gone poorly for basically everybody out there.
Besides Steve Fisher.
Yeah.
Like, he's like the one.
Hey, but Drew, did he ever win a national championship again?
Well,
he could never climb the mountain again. Do you want a guy that peaks as an interim and then can't, just saying.
Well, if a certain person doesn't try to call a timeout when you don't have one, maybe that would.
Hey, true.
Anyway, I just think some people are getting over their skis a little bit with this. Like, he did a good job tonight. I think he's a solid coach, but Drew brought it up. I mean, if you don't win at North Florida, you're not going to win at K-State. There's a reason he was at North Florida for 10 or 15 years and never made a move up to another, even mid-major. Like, that's a low-major program. So it would take a miracle finish in getting to the Elite Eight or something like that for me to even think. And I don't even care about how many people we miss on. Like it's just not in the realm of possibility that you hire this guy. I mean, make this hire as your head coach. Yeah. And we would have to be completely dissed by every other major coach in the country, and the national pundits are right that we just made everybody mad at us for what we did on Sunday. So that's the only way it gets to that point for me, and it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I would say I saw somebody having, I had it favorited, but then I lost it. But they just kind of made the note there on the Driscoll situation and everything too. Like, Baylor's not a good team. So again, while it was fun tonight, it was better. Baylor's not good, and I saw in there like, this is the difference between, I use the term adult in the room versus whatever Jerome Tang had been doing the last 2 years running the program. Like, we saw that difference tonight. This team has enough guys on it to not have been as bad as they were. And this makes it for a really fascinating discussion about what would last year's team have looked like if there was somebody different running it that had a little bit more experience in that situation or whatever. But I think that's something to consider. Baylor's obviously not good, but this was just such a far cry from what had been going on from a coach that was either distracted or just really misguided at the end with how Jerome Tang was. Now, again, with how this plays out, we can't ignore the irony that just is inflating this game tonight with Matthew Driscoll coming in, immediately dominating a team, getting only the second Big 12 win of the season. It happens against Baylor, which, by the way, everybody clowning my bold predictions, really hard to do when a team sucks because everything's a bold prediction. I did say that it was going to get embarrassing for Scott Drew tonight, and it did, because your boy just got fired by this school for being terrible, and here you go. You go out and lose by 16 to him. Like, it's a massive double whammy. Baylor, you just lost to a crappy team, and oh, by the way, that team is way better without your guy running the program. So tough night for Scott Drew, I'm sure. But maybe they can make a pit stop by Jerome Tang's house on the way out of town. They can have a quick hug and it'll all be okay. So yeah, just kind of interesting to think about everything that was at play with tonight. And obviously the side that Matthew Driscoll was also an assistant for Scott Drew. So like just emotions all around that are kind of fascinating with how this game ended up playing out. Any other thoughts from this game tonight, either how it played out on the floor or kind of big picture that is at play here?
I just have like one thing left to say for about like the actual game tonight. Scott Drew might be washed. Like they are
well,
not.
I got this for you. Cubs Mike asked, what has happened to Baylor? Drew has to be getting closer to the hot seat. No, I'm assuming that Cubs Mike is a Chicago Cubs fan and not a young Baylor fan, that he is one of the Cubs. But yeah, he was asking about this anyways. And Drew is a specialist in saying that Scott Drew, I don't even know that he's lost his fastball. He's like, I don't want to say what just popped in my head to say. So anyways, fastball is beyond gone. Maybe
he is kind of like the guy in Major League that can't hit the curveball right now.
No.
he is not good.
And I would say there's kind of similar struggles that we saw with Jerome Tang in handling the portal. Like, they replaced their entire team this year. They had 0 returners from last year's team on this year's team for Baylor Bears. Yesufu was a big get. Like, he's legit. Like, he's a top 20 freshman in the country. But when your next best player is Cameron Carr, like, he's fine. I remember coaching against him when he was a freshman at Manhattan High School.
He was 4'6".
I never imagined he'd be this good. He's a solid player, but he should not be your second best player. And then you pick up Dan Skillings from Cincinnati, a bunch of other transfers that aren't really high profile guys. And you're playing 6 or 7 guys in your rotation. You have 0 depth at Baylor, which is pretty wild for considering where they come from. And they really don't. It'll be interesting to see how many guys they have back next year. I would guess it might be 1 or 2 again. So I think we're seeing some of the same issues with handling portal players that we saw kind of with Jerome Tang the last couple of years. And he just happens to be able to recruit that top 10 high school kid that Jerome Tang could never land.
Yeah, we've talked about this
a lot.
Since they started recruiting like the elite freshmen, their roster construction is awful. Like, I'll throw out a hot take in here that might get clowned. I think Utah is better than Baylor, like the version of Baylor that we saw tonight.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know that I would go that far, but
Baylor was
it's not.
non-competitive against a team that just fired their coach for cause 3 days ago.
Yeah, but we've already determined that this was a better K-State team than what Utah saw when they came to Manhattan because of that coaching change. So, what are you gonna do? A couple of the other questions, and the other thing I was alluding to, I didn't even think you were going there with what we've talked about with Baylor, was I've pointed out a number of times, like, it's interesting how Baylor's downfall is coinciding with Jerome Tang really struggling. And so you start to see that, like, I don't think it was a bad hire that K-State made at the time, but the times were a changing, and Jerome Tang clearly not built for it. The Baylor system apparently not built for it. And we're seeing that kind of play out here. And now Grant McCaslin's having a fine time at Texas Tech, probably a little different because he's got crazy NIL money, I'm sure, to work with. But also, I think he is a little bit more distant from the Baylor ideology in terms of, like, very clear that Scott Drew and Jerome Tang still, like, right in step with each other. I mean, they were together for 20 some years, so it makes sense, but kind of interesting from that perspective. One of the questions from Carl was asking about Driscoll. Keep him on staff. Will there be any staff retention with the next coach? No, absolutely nobody should come back from this staff. I think there are some guys that I'm going to feel bad for them, that they're going to be attached to the stink of what went down with this program, but you have to do a hard reset. Nobody should be back from the staff that had anything to do with player personnel or on-court coaching decisions. So no, nobody will be back from this. Tater's World asked, have you all considered Chris Mack as a head coach possibility? Said in the broadcast that Drew Driscoll went over to Tank's place last night. No, I don't think Chris Mack makes a lot of sense. It didn't end well at Louisville for him when he jumped up there from Xavier. He's at College of Charleston right now. I couldn't even tell you how Charleston is doing at this point in time, but I could tell you, based off of not knowing how Charleston is doing, that it's not somebody that I would be interested in getting back into the market for if you're K-State. And Charleston's 17-10 right now, 10-4 in the CAA, which, again, it's the Coastal Athletic Association now, not the Colonial. So get that right, folks. Woke America took away the Colonial from us. I don't know the reason. Again, I'm not trying to make a political statement. I'm just trying to be funny. So no, Chris Mack, I wouldn't have any interest there. If you're K-State, I think his time has passed. So there are enough other options out there that have head coaching experience, but their best days are ahead of them. Whereas it's pretty clear that Chris Mack's best days are behind him. Even if he could be just a good coach again at this level, it seems close to impossible that he could get it as good as he had it at Xavier and then the first few years at Louisville. So I would say no on Chris Mack. Carl also threw in there about Baylor fans telling before the game that he'll get a lot of time. Yeah, Scott Drew is going to get a handful of years to try to figure this out. Like, Scott Drew he's really Baylor at this point. They can't really claim Art Briles. So they have, like, Scott Drew's all they've got. And when a guy takes you from players murdering each other and not being able to play a conference schedule to national champions and perennial national power, he's going to get a pretty long leash down there, especially because, it's not like Scott Drew has a ton of scandals floating around with him. And the football coach, we just talked about Art Briles, however many years ago, dealt with that. The athletic director got ousted because of it. Like, they're going to let Scott Drew continue to do his thing. But it will be like it's probably going to have to be done in the next 3 years. So we'll see how that ends up working out. Ryan asked, what are the chances that this was just a dead cap bounce? So I think that's a good way to kind of start to wind things down. And I'll get some final questions compiled if you throw them into the chat. But I'll ask you guys, how likely is it that that's all this was? And to kind of build off of Dan Boy's over-under, is it more likely that this is the only win that Driscoll has at K-State, or more likely that they get to 3 wins under Driscoll. So that's not even that 4 number that Drew is a little scared of, but 3. So this or that.
I'll say that it's more likely that this is the only win than that K-State gets to 4. 4 is a lot. Remember, this is still a really flawed roster that has to have a lot of things go right to win. The 3 of the teams that they play aren't very good, but the odds of all of that falling into place 3 times, we'll see.
Mine would be sort of pending Bashir coming back. Like if he comes back with some energy, I think Colorado, TCU, West Virginia, they could win 2 out of those 3, just because those are pretty mid to bad programs right now, and they're still playing for a little bit. But again, as this season progresses, they're in the boat of you have all these transfers and you have nothing to play for besides your next school, which is kind of the sad state of college basketball when you get to this end stretch. But it's going to be who is playing for more. I don't know if K-State's going to be playing for more at that point. So that would be where I'd lean. If Bashir is not back, I would say this is more likely the last win than it is 2 more wins after this.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that all goes down. I want to mention to anybody that's interested, you can go find the Scott Drew post-game press conference here on the KSO YouTube page as well. And once Matthew Driscoll is done with his press conference, we'll have that up as well. It's obviously going to be a fascinating time in there this evening and see how it ends up playing out with everything. Oh, Scott, are you new here? Or are you just trying to get my goat? We have a strict no 3G rule in 2026. Okay. It's the 5G era. No more 3G on the basketball court or with your phones. So yes, no Greg Marshall. Yeah. If anybody suggests Greg Marshall or Chris Jans, I'm not going to ban you because I'll give you a second chance, but just know that in my head, I have banned you as a ball knower because we do not want that at Kansas State University. I'm not even talking to you as somebody in the media right now. I'm talking to you as a Kansas State alum that wants the best for my university, that represents me as a human and is really the only thing I care about outside of my family. No to Greg Marshall or Chris Jans. It would be the worst experience of my life. But there you go. Carl did ask, and we talked about this a little bit, Drew, yesterday. By the way, fan, you're welcome to leave. Get on the road if you want to. I don't want to hold you hostage. But he did say, wondering what our opinion was. Is this head coaching job interesting to good head coaches after the mess with Tang leaving and no high school recruiting? Well, good head coaches won't even coach here. Drew and I already kind of answered it, so I'll let fan take that one.
I think there's still plenty of resources. I think this is still a good program. I don't think – I think we are, as K-State fans, because we're close to it and it's important to us, are getting caught up in the bad PR. And I think it's just a brief instance of bad PR. This is an attractive job because of, number one, K-State has money. K-State has proven they'll pay some money. They've got boosters. Now you have to reinvigorate them, and I think a new coach is automatically going to do that. So I think that's number one, especially if they come in with a good plan. Number two, K-State has success. The last 3 coaches have gone to Elite 8. You have a couple of Big 12 titles in the last 10 years. You've had success. Now, the last 7 years, not so much. You had the end of one guy and then one guy have one really good year and then taper off. But it's clear that fans will support K-State, and K-State has money that's on par with at least the top 30 teams in the country, if not a little better than that. So I think we're making too much of this is going to kill our chances to hire a new coach. A new coach that's worth his salt isn't going to care. They're just going to look at a program.
That's what the national media wants you to believe, is that K-State's cooked and that they are the devil in when it comes to college basketball programs. You know, like, golly.
They do. And that will go away too. They'll find something else to harp on. Part of it is there's nothing else going on right now that really matters. And I think people just like to get their opinion out there when something like this happens.
Yeah. Seth Greenberg, where are you at? Please, I hope he's on SportsCenter tonight and he's talking about this.
And then the last thing is, there's nothing fired coaches like to do more than support other fired coaches.
Yeah,
Like that's they love to do that.
Yes, yeah, they have to. That's all how this works. So, yeah, especially a guy like Seth Greenberg, whose resume is very Jerome Tang. Like, if Jerome Tang was coaching at Virginia Tech, he'd still have 5 seasons left to go before they fired him. You know how I know that? Because they let Seth Greenberg coach there for 10 seasons, and he was only making it to the tournament twice, and I think his highest seed was like an 11 seed. So, yeah, Seth Greenberg can get out of here. We've known him to be a blowhard for a while, and you can barely call him a washed head coach, because I don't know that he was ever in the game. But yeah, certainly funny to see how things played out tonight. And that's maybe the sweetest thing about this for K-State fans, is that you've seen your school and your program get dragged the last couple of days for everything that's going down. And for this to be the statement that's made after, it's not nothing that took place tonight. That is a win beyond just the one win you get for beating Baylor. Like, it's a little extra on top of it that, yeah, things were really bad. And just making a little bit of a change led to that in this circumstance. And here's kind of what I'll tie into that and just make it clear to everybody, because maybe you haven't heard it in other places that we've discussed it. But to me, and how this is all played out, K-State can look like the bad guy in some way, but that's because that's what the lawyer that's fighting something is going to do. That's what the person that's fighting something is going to do. And while Gene Taylor has certainly not been perfect already to start this thing, a lot of this stuff would have happened anyways. I think probably, he could maybe not talk as much early on as he did, but a lot of the stuff that went on and has been reported, I think people are a little too panicked on how that could impact things playing out. Certainly there are some things that maybe it's not going to be great, but like the offer that was made for Tang to finish the season, well, how does that contradict firing for cause? Like, you could easily just play that off as, hey, that was the first like settlement offer that we gave him, because that's where this is going to ultimately end up. K-State's not going to pay that full number, and Jerome Tang's also not going to get $0. So they're going to find somewhere in the middle. It's going to get settled, and it'll be fine on that end of things. But don't just go into this thinking that K-State is like in a bad spot and they're the bad guy from all of this. This is all how this just has to work out. And as I've said, Jerome Tang gave K-State the opportunity to make this Hail Mary play, to do the firing for cause. I think if he had just gone out with a whimper and K-State dies like Utah is or like Baylor is, and there's no drama involved with it, it's just bad basketball, he's probably collecting every single penny that he is owed at the end, because that's what Gene Taylor was planning on when he made the decision a few weeks ago to start trying to be at least positioned to fire Jerome Tang. And then I would say, to kind of go off that and finish off my thought with this, is that when it comes to this whole situation playing out and where K-State is going with it, there's really something in the back of my head that makes me think this was calculated by Jerome Tang in some ways, because it's almost impossible how he kept stepping in it after you had multiple days of like a cool down period and to kind of get a reminder. Like, Gene Taylor did say Sunday night, he talked to Jerome Tang after that press conference and did like what were you thinking and all this. And that should have been the time where Jerome Tang goes, okay, you know what I shouldn't do is go out and say that my players are coaching this game against Houston. And nope, he did it. And it's like he had a stretch where 3 straight weeks the press conference was a total dud for him. And I think that's what makes me go, did he torpedo this on purpose to force this to be a thing, to where like you're going to get public opinion on your side? Because we've seen it. It's worked already with all these coaches and national media members that haven't paid attention to it. So that's the last thing I'll say, is that Just because it's maybe slightly embarrassing for K-State right now doesn't mean that it's going to be long term. And we'll ultimately see how this ends up playing out. But I'm not worried overall for K-State. So we'll see how it goes.
No, I'm not either. I mean, it does make me laugh though. All the national media was so loud the last few days in case it actually wins a game and nobody cares anymore.
Yeah, and to me, like I'm not stupid. Like I don't think K-State's going to get out of here with $0, and I don't think that it's a slam dunk that they win anything in this, litigation that they're about to enter into. But what I do want to fight back against is a lot of the misnomers in the narrative that is going around in the national media. And I don't think it's a slam dunk the other way like the national media thinks, or that this is a good time and it's fair to dump on K-State for it. Because again, Jerome Tang forced them into this position because K-State had to fire Jerome Tang right now. So the option is you guarantee you pay him nearly $19 million to do it, or because he said and done some really, really stupid things recently, you have this chance to make this play. And like I've always said, these people are smart with their money and the decisions they will ultimately make legally. If it starts to go in the direction anytime that K-State is going to be on the hook for more than what that buyout number is, they are going to parachute out of it, and they are just going to say, all right, here's your money, back off, we're done, it's over, and move on, because the money is there. You don't make this move if you don't have the full buyout. So that's just the last thing that I'll say on that. We've hit on it enough, and we'll be talking more about whatever else fallout happens here after. So that'll do it for tonight, at least for the portion of this show. Fan, you can get on out of here. Drew, are you interested in sticking around to play back the Scott Drew press conference and react to that?
I'll probably head out because it's almost 12:30 a.m.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, well, what do you got to do tomorrow? Nothing? Work? No, that's fine. You can get out of here, and I'll play the Scott Drew press conference now for everybody. And as soon as that's done, likely should have the Matthew Driscoll press conference to give you. So I will get that going so everybody can hear Scott Drew.
First, I want to say congrats to Kansas State. I thought Coach Driscoll, the staff, did a great job. I thought it actually started before the Houston game. I thought they really competed. I know Coach Sampson felt the same way, like they were really coming together. I hated playing them right now, but I think the game started with Nate Johnson hitting those threes to begin. And leadership-wise, I think he's really done a great job in the last week, just from watching press conferences and his leadership. His 33 points, his efficiency, 9 assists, 5 rebounds. We didn't have anybody that could guard him. And Haggerty always does what he does, and that's score. What you want to do is make it more inefficient. And 15 for 23, he was really good. As far as us, 3 for 24. Not going to win a lot of games shooting the three like that, but the turnovers really kill us. And 19 turnovers, you're not going to win a Big 12 game like that. So again, credit to K-State. Coaches, we can watch teams play and like they're trending up or they're trending down. I knew this was going to be a really hard game. And we tried to warn our guys, but obviously we weren't ready to match the intensity tonight.
Scott, what was it like watching the circumstances with Jerome?
I mean, 19 years together. I mean, in the world, you have a lot of 50% people get divorced, and I bet the average isn't 19 years. So, I mean, he's family. We won championships together. It's been emotional for me, our staff, program, because I think everyone can relate. If you got a brother, a friend, and they go through any hardship, you feel it. And again, I know how much he cares about his coaches, and they got some great guys on that staff, and I know they love Kansas State, and today, I think, showed just what they're capable of. And again, I knew this was coming based on how they played against Houston. It was really impressive.
How was he when you saw him last night or saw him today?
Coach Tang never stays down long because he's such a positive and optimistic person. I think he had opportunities to leave, and he stayed because he really loves the people here, loves the school. And when I lose, the worst thing I do is I let people down, and that's harder on me and it's harder on him. He wanted to win for the people and wanted to win for the students and everybody. Just like tonight, I'm the embarrassed one, and I'm embarrassed for our fans because if you watch tonight, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do nowadays, and when they follow a team, you got to give them a reason to follow you, and we didn't tonight.
Flip side, is there a party that's happy that Matthew had an offer?
Yeah, you know, God always works. When I took over at Valpo, Coach Driscoll was there for 2 months, I think, bought a house, got all moved in, and then I said, we got to go. But he was somebody that really taught all of us coaches Power 5 at that time, basketball, really trained all of us, and we all learned from him. And through the years, he's been like the granddad, the OG. So we all love him. We know how great he is. He's a soldier in the Army, and there's nobody more loyal or caring or hardworking. So when you play family, I'm just telling you, like, you don't win either way. You win, you're happy, but you know how they feel, and you lose. Trust me, that sucks. I think his consistency. I mean, he's going to be here at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. He doesn't sleep. He used to drink coffee all the time. Now I don't know what he does, but Dunkin' Donuts probably has made a lot more money since he's been here. But he's just real positive. He's real optimistic, and he's someone that's reliable. I mean, that's why our whole people that have coached with him, that know him, he's genuine, he's true. And God knew Coach Tang needed him here this year, so.
How strange was this for you?
I think this whole year has been really strange, and I think this Twilight Zone capped it off for me. So, we got a day off tomorrow, and I need it because I've been an emotional wreck.
Did you have a message or any advice for Jerome?
Right now, I just want to be a friend. You just want to hug them. It's like, I think everybody relates when you go through a grieving process of anything, and I just know because my brother went through it. When you're not successful, you feel like you let everybody down, and I mean, it's not easy. So I just want to love them and be there to support them in the short term.
Was there any challenges with Nate and PJ kind of where they maybe switched?
Yeah, which one wanted to score? I mean, one had it, he scored. The other one had it, he scored. So our defensive awareness of those two was obviously not what it needed to be. And I'm going to tell you all year long, PJ scores on 2 or 3 guys. So, I mean, you better have a whole wall for him. But I think Nate's leadership, and I saw it in the interview with the Houston, and I mean, when you go through tough times, that really either it breaks people or brings them together. And I knew it'd bring this team together. This was not the night to play him.
There you go. That was Scott Drew after the game. I really don't know that there was a ton that I took away from it, but certainly knew it was going to be fascinating for people to hear from him, given the circumstances at hand with how things have gone recently for Jerome Tang, who coached with him for a very long time. The only things that kind of stood out to me there, and not to try to it did come across as interesting and funny to me that Scott Drew made a comment about he knows how much Jerome Tang cares about his coaches, but didn't mention the players, which I kind of thought was just going to come immediately after. That seems like the natural follow-up there. And then definitely trying to lean into, hey, this team was starting to turn the corner at Houston. So just definitely planting some seeds there of things going on. But anyways, that will do it for us tonight. The Matthew Driscoll interview isn't fully up yet, so that will be up probably, I would imagine, sometime in the next 10 minutes here on KSO. You'll be able to find it, watch it there. I know that Driscoll had a very lengthy opening statement that he went through, and certainly, as it will be for a little bit, interesting to get the perspective of these guys, because don't forget, K-State will be in Lubbock this weekend. Grant McCasland on staff with Scott Drew and Jerome Tang at Baylor. So there is a history there as well. And I'm sure he will get a question or two about Jerome Tang and not being there for K-State. But that will do it for us tonight. Thanks to Drew. Thanks to Fan for hopping on. And thanks to all of you once again for joining us on Postgame Live. Really appreciate how well you all have supported it this year. And we'll continue throughout the rest of the season. And we'll be here Saturday afternoon after K-State and Texas Tech wrap up from Lubbock.